What's up? What's up?
Hey guys.
This is a quarantine episode of Beer Time with Books. We just got Dani on the line.
Could you use the proper title, please?
What's that?
Quarantine with Books.
That's the official change for the foreseeable future. We've been practicing good social isolation. And so we were supposed to do this podcast episode, 4 days ago?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up deciding to delay and learn how to do this via FaceTime. So Dani is on the line on FaceTime for this episode. So thanks for joining us from your humble abode.
Welcome to my crib.
Brian, can you make her full screen?
Oh, you're going to full screen my face?
Yeah. I want to see full screen Dani. Thank you.
I'm here. I'm full screening.
This is all...
We figured out landscape FaceTime a few days ago when we tested, so we're really moving on up.
Yeah, we're just learning the ropes of everything, and we're doing it on the fly. But yeah, we're going to do this episode from afar, and we are doing our second book of the podcast, which was Jamie's Choice.
Of the season, not of the podcast.
Oh yeah, of second season, yeah.
Yeah, so today we're talking about Sing Unburied, Sing by Jesmyn Ward. But before we get to that, what's everybody drinking?
Yeah, let's get into what everybody's drinking.
I'll start. I went to the liquor store today because I've been without alcohol for this entirety of the quarantining. So I broke my quarantine, went to the liquor store, went to Don's? It's by you guys. And Don's, Sam's, I don't know. It's called something.
Some guy's
have no
name.
Idea. Is it on 39th?
And it's on Southwest Boulevard.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I got some apple radlers.
Oh.
So I went on a run today. It was sunny. I was feeling summery. So I'm feeling radlers. I'm having a Boulevard apple and lemon radler.
It is the first day of spring officially today.
Feeling springy.
So, that seems early to me, isn't it? Normally like 21st or 22nd or something. I saw that on Twitter. I'll have to maybe confirm that's true.
I think it's 24 hours early this year or something. 26 hours early this year.
Is it because of leap day?
Oh yeah, it could be.
Is it because of the coronavirus?
Yeah, it's just everything is out of whack. So, cool. I think that actually may be a first for the show too. That specific radler, keeping it fresh. Even
this
in
specific radler, I think I maybe had the lemon one once last year.
Yeah.
Around the same time, probably.
Yeah, this may be the first for this apple, though.
Oh, it's great. This is great. I've never had this before, so
really?
This is good. I'm a fan.
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice mixture between a beer and a cider. I've had it.
Yeah, ciders tend to be a little too sweet for me. So I am digging the radler life.
Nice. Well, for mine here, this is Brian. I am doing a repeat from last time. I don't think I had this one. This was something that Dani had, but this is the Odell Wolf Picker Experimental IPA.
Yeah.
So got that one still from the last episode. We still had some in the fridge because we haven't really made a significant run recently. So yeah, we're just rolling through that. It's pretty good. Again,
yeah,
I was
give
talking.
Give us a slurp on.
Oh yeah. As I said before, the IPAs are really killing it for me recently. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm drinking.
Nice. This is Jamie. Hi.
So sorry.
This is Jamie.
Stay over there.
I'm drinking a Beer Time with Books classic, Boulevard Tank 7.
Yep, one of the.
We love it.
One
I
of
love
the.
to see it.
It's the first time on the pod I've had the canned Tank 7. So
Yeah, new development.
I've never had a Tank 7 on the pod, so that's next.
Oh.
Really? How?
I don't think I've ever had a Tank 7 on the pod, so.
That was on the top of last season for, I think, maybe that was mine. Yeah.
Yeah, it was mine.
Yeah, it was yours.
Yeah. So cool. And with that, we'll also be getting into, let's try to keep this semi-condensed because obviously in quarantine there's a lot of chance to consume more media than ever as we've been trying to.
Every piece of media.
Just stay inside. So yeah, just like a couple highlights recently of some media you've been consuming. I think this would be a good time also for anybody that's listening. Hope you all are keeping it real out there, staying safe, but maybe a couple extra pieces of media to check out in the meantime while you're not listening to all the episodes of Beer Time with Books.
Yeah, listen to these before you listen to anything else.
So with that, Dani, you can go ahead and share a couple highlights.
Sure. I have been watching the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. It has with quarantine. It has taken me like 7 minutes to get through the whole first 2 seasons. I'm like 2 episodes already into season 3, which is the last season available. So, I love it.
You really did fly through that.
Yeah, I flew through it also considering that each episode is like 58 minutes long, and so I've been going hard. I love it. I love the 50s New York vibe. I love the pastels. I love the, all of it besides the casual racism and misogyny. We don't love to see that, but
honestly,
everything else is great.
I thought it was a little lighter at the beginning. It was almost like that was one of the things that I found.
It was almost like race agnostic.
Yeah. At the very beginning, I think the later seasons they start to get into that a bit more, but at the beginning that was something that I was kind of like, I wished that they would have addressed it more, and then they do later on.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about it. I'll keep this short. I was just thinking about it though because I saw some comments on the 3rd season where people were talking about how they didn't appreciate that they hadn't really like talked much about like racism, or even they barely even like call out like blatant misogyny. And the only thing I can think of is that like it reminds me of in Schitt's Creek. Schitt's Creek has like one of the main characters is kind of like pansexual. One of the there's a lot of just like kind of fluid things with gender and sexuality, and they don't like they live in a small town. It's like a small country town, and they don't really address it. They kind of acknowledge, even outside of the show, that it's like kind of agnostic in that way. They wanted to create an environment where that like didn't really exist. But the difference is that like that show is present day, and like Mrs. Maisel is like it already happened.
Right.
Like it takes place in a time where that already happened, and so. So yeah, I think that they definitely like almost like as you get deeper into the show, they address it a little more aggressively. But yeah, I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah, we loved it. It's definitely some light vibes for these dark times.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been making me happy. I'm continuing to listen to review, which Jamie and also Brian, if you haven't listened to, it's like I can't listen to it on my runs anymore because I laugh too loud. Like I laugh too hard, like listening to these
out
like
on the trail, just bursting out,
just like screaming with laughter. It like makes me like lose my breath. Like I run out of breath. I don't have enough breath to laugh and also run. And so, I recommend review. And I also started. Wide Sargasso Sea, which I think we talked about on the last episode, but maybe I hadn't started reading yet, so I'm halfway through that. Lots of good content when you're cooped up.
Nice,
inside.
Yeah, absolutely. Jamie, how about you?
What media haven't I consumed? Honestly, I'm like on spring break right now, as well as being socially isolated, so I don't have anything to do other than consume media. But I listened to one audiobook in like 3 days, and I really loved it. It was called Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson, I believe. And I really, really, really loved that. I highly recommend it. It was funny and quirky and weird, and I liked it a lot. And also there's like very subtle queer themes, which I appreciated. I don't know. I really loved it.
I appreciate a subtle queer theme.
I love a subtle queer theme. I don't know, like, I don't know how to describe that. I think it was just like, it was a novel that integrated like an LGBTQ character very, very naturally, which I think is good to acknowledge. And I just started reading The Buried Giant by Kazuo Ishiguro. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Which, Dani, I think you've read that one.
Oh, yeah. I think I've read all the Kazuo Ishiguro in your library.
Yeah.
Which I found out today we have 4, apparently.
Yeah, I read them all. And then I think I have a few from the library that I've also read. I went on an Ishiguro kick a few years ago.
Yeah, I've read...
The Buried Giant I love. It's very fantastical, and I love it.
Yeah, I like it so far. I've only read one other one by him, which I cannot think of the... Never Let Me Go? Yes, Never Let Me Go.
Yeah.
I've read that one a few years ago, and I loved it, which is why I bought a bunch of Kazuo Ishiguro. But then I never picked them up, and now I'm stuck in my house. So I'm reading The Buried Giant. I'm 2 chapters in. I really like it. And I started a new audiobook also called The Sympathizer by Viet Tan Nguyen. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Nguyen, maybe.
Or when.
When, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe when. Which is a little bit out of my wheelhouse. I've listened to 1 chapter of it, and I like it, but I feel like maybe I don't have enough historical knowledge to like fully grasp everything that's happening, because it's about the Vietnam War, and the Viet Cong. Like, the main character is a spy, and he's a sympathizer for the Viet Cong in Vietnam during the war. But he, like, works for the United States government, kind of. I don't know. I like it, but I hope that I'll learn more as I go. And that's about it. Brian and I are still watching The Crown.
Yeah. Yeah, for mine, I finally finished a bunch of books that had just been kind of like sitting in a nebulous space as far as I had been reading them for a long time, which freed me up then to start a couple new ones. So I started an audiobook, All the King's Men by Robert Penn Warren, which is from the book mug, which we've talked about on the pod before. This is making more progress on one of the books on the book mug. Dani's face as she's like, wait a second, because she's trying to finish
Wait a minute,
2.
are you winning?
So I've started that. I think.
Wait, is All the King's Men Watergate?
No, it's like a earlier 20th century political novel from what I'm aware. I barely started it, but I think it's quite a bit earlier. If I recall, it's the 1930s, but I literally just started, so I need to get a little bit deeper on that. So
what is the book I'm thinking of? All right, I'm going to look for the book I'm thinking of.
And then also Jamie and I made a commitment yesterday to both start a physical book as well. So I ended up picking up The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon. Have you read it?
Tell me. No, I read another one of his books.
Okay, cool.
I read like that one's the most famous one, and I read another one that wasn't as famous, but I liked the other one.
Yeah.
Did you read the Yiddish Policeman's Unit? Or whatever it's called.
The Yiddish Policeman's Union. Yes, I read it, and took me kind of a long time, but I really, really liked it.
Okay.
Yeah,
we have that one too. I just haven't. I started that one a long time ago and never finished it.
Yeah.
The book that I was thinking of was All the President's Men.
Oh, okay. So it's close.
Which makes much more sense.
Yeah. So yeah, it's nice to have 2 more, and that one's a bit longer, but I'm thinking I'll have plenty of time to be sitting around and reading, so that'll be nice. And then also, just as a quick thing, I finally caught up to Time Crisis. I mentioned this like a long time ago, and you guys keep having like podcasts that you guys are going deep on and have caught up like multiple episodes. And so now I'm finally in the club of like
did it.
Oh yeah, and what was so crazy is like of all the times to catch up, the most recent episode they did was on Sunday, and they did it in isolation. they didn't go into their regular studios. They all FaceTimed each other. And so, like, it was just so weird to catch up right then because it's so topical and they're talking about a lot of different things. And I'm not fully done with the episode. I'm listening to it right now. But yeah, it's just kind of crazy to get it from their perspective too, from a different part of the country. And they're still trying to keep it light a little bit, but like just hearing the perspective of Ezra Koenig, the lead singer of Vampire Weekend, he's talking about how all this is affecting the music industry a little bit, just because he's in that firsthand of like show cancellations and festival cancellations. It's kind of crazy to hear, but like at the same time, you know, they're still trying to be entertaining and give people like movies to watch, and a lot of them, they have older movies from like the 1940s and 50s that they're like, these are crazy, but this is a good time to dive deep in some of these, because we just watched Casablanca, and so it'll be nice to see a couple of those too. But regardless, that's been the main thing. It's nice to finally catch up, because you guys keep being like, I'm on episode 100 of whatever. And so now I'm finally in the club. So with that, it was a little bit of a longer media section, but if anybody's looking for stuff in this time of self-isolation, hopefully you have a decent list of...
You got some recs.
Yeah, of a couple extra things. But with that, we're going to get into the book we had mentioned earlier. This is the second book of the second season, and this is Jamie's choice. So I'm going to pass it on over to her.
All right. Hi, guys. Like we already said, we're reading Sing Unburied Sing. We've read half of it. Gonna start with a quick summary of what we read. It's been a few days since I finished this, because I finished it for planning to pod on Sunday. So,
and now you've also read a couple other books.
Yeah,
in the meantime,
I've been reading other things, and so if I forget something, fill it in. But essentially, we're following a family. We are in Mississippi, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
We're following a family. The main narrator kind of is a 13-year-old boy named Jojo. And we get a lot of perspective from him and his mother, Leonie, I think is how I've been thinking of that. But it's kind of the main focus of the story is Jojo's dad getting out of prison. So his dad's name is Michael. Leonie and Michael are not married. And Leonie and Michael are a mixed race couple. So Jojo has grown up with the black side of his family with his mother. And the white side of his family, Michael's parents don't really talk to him or don't like to associate with him.
Or are potentially actively racist.
I mean, definitely actively racist,
Yeah.
but like they just kind of have distanced themselves, it seems. Like, they definitely don't like Leonie. And Leonie takes Jojo and her daughter, Kayla, or Michaela, depending on who you ask, upstate to get their father out of prison, which... Off the top of my head, I don't know if it's actually told. He was arrested for dealing drugs, right? Are we assuming that?
Yeah.
Okay.
They pass a yeah.
I feel like it hasn't described
Yeah,
that actual scene yet where he gets arrested, but
Jojo alludes to it when there is like meth involved in one of the scenes, and he like alludes to Michael, his father, being Michael, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Being arrested for like selling drugs or doing drugs.
Yes. So that's like the main thing that's actually happening. But there's a lot going on in between that. I think most of the story, the narrators switch back and forth mostly between Jojo and Leonie at this point. But we're getting a lot of like inner workings of how this family is set up, and also how both of those characters have some kind of like seeing ability is how I'm gonna refer to that. So there's discussion of ghosts. Leonie's brother passed away when he was like 20, and she sees him every time she gets high.
And he was killed by Michael's cousin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
in
was
a
a
very
twist I was not
racist
Yeah.
incident. And his name's Given. So she sees Given. And then also JoJo talks about a lot of different things. He starts to definitely see a ghost right at the end of the section that we read.
Yeah, what a time to stop. We hit right when the ghost, it's, somebody that his grandpa has talked about.
Yeah. But JoJo also talks about, like, being able to talk to animals, kind of, in, like, vague ways. So there's hints at him having some sort of ability as well throughout. But at this point, I would say it's mostly about his relationship with his mother.
And a road novel. They've been traveling quite a bit.
And they've been traveling, and yeah. So that's my summary, I guess. So I want to start, because we alluded to this in the last episode before any of us had started this, but do we see comparisons between this novel and As I Lay Dying? And if so, what are they? Or do you think that maybe that's not an accurate portrayal comparison?
I mean, I think that, like, definitely on the surface, like, it is a family. They are traveling, like, very astute of me. I mean, but, it's, like, not just, like, I think the point is that the journey is important in both stories, and the journey of, like, the family together, like, changes them almost. Like, I think we're already seeing changes in, like, the way that JoJo is, like, observing the way that his mother is, like, not really a mother. Like, he seems to already have acknowledged that, but he has a lot of time to think about it and see that Leonie, like, really doesn't take good care of him. She feeds herself first always. She really doesn't think of her kids at all, ever. And so it is really interesting. I think that the journey matters as much as the destination, or actually even more, which was the case with As I Lay Dying. So I definitely see similarities in that way. And also, I mean, I haven't thought about this too much, but it just occurred to me also that, the mother in both stories is, kind of the center in a way, in very different ways. But, like Leonie and what is the mom's name in As I Lay Dying? I've already forgotten.
Addie.
Addie. So, Addie and Leonie, like, I don't think, I think we could probably delve into the ways that they are similar. Maybe neither of them wanted to be mothers. Like, that was a whole thing. But, in that way, they're also not, they're kind of the focus in different ways of the journeys. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely see some similarities. I don't know that I would pull those similarities out of I don't know that I would, having read these not back to back and knowing this, I don't know that I would immediately be like, this book really reminds me of Faulkner's As I Lay Dying.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that you could absolutely, I mean, I think they're much more similar than other books are similar.
Yeah, I think that, like, obviously the structural part of it, they're both Mississippi novels, and I think that it being in the geography of the American South is an important factor to both.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's a big tie. And then obviously the narrator switching around is a big tie, but it's interesting how much deeper of a perspective we get on each of these narrators at any given time, because we had so much of these, like, shifts here, there, every single person in the novel, the townspeople, whatever. And in this one, it's very much more focused because we're just getting JoJo and Leonie mainly.
Yeah.
We get into Richie at the end, but I think the bulk of the chapters so far have just been alternating between JoJo and Leonie, and they've been fairly long. But what has also been interesting is that, you're talking about this being a road novel, and obviously As I Lay Dying was, largely a road novel as well. But it was just from this point A to point B aspect here, where they were just trying to get Addie to the place that she had asked to be buried. But here it seems like halfway through the book, we've already reached that point B, which is adding an extra dynamic here, because at the beginning, just being cognizant of the fact that they're supposed to be somewhat similar, that I thought the whole journey would be going to get Michael out of prison.
Oh, that's interesting.
But yeah, now we've already gotten Michael. He's come out, and the last perspective we get, because the last chapter we read was from the perspective of somebody named Richie, which is a character that the grandfather who, very importantly, JoJo calls Papa, and he calls his grandma Mama, and calls his parents by their names. But this was Papa's acquaintance that he met at the jail that Michael is coming out of currently. Mm-hmm. But we only see Michael that brief moment when he comes out. We only just got to that, and that's a whole new active perspective. So I think that's going to be really interesting of the comparisons are kind of largely over from that standpoint, that we were expecting to, at least I was, go all the way to the jail and maybe something happens when he gets out, but he's out, and now it's kind of what's going on after that. It's going to be a really interesting part of the back half.
Yeah
I think that you could also, though, that's interesting. I don't know that I thought about it that way. I don't know that I was actively thinking that the destination was actually the jail. I was actually thinking that the story, the destination is bringing him home from jail. Mm-hmm. So their journey there lasted 3 of these 6 chapters, and I'm fully expecting, I was kind of fully expecting the journey back to also be full of a lot of content, a lot of maybe the last 4 chapters are also transporting him back from prison. So I don't know. I mean, maybe the entire book is going to be take place largely in the car. JoJo's flashbacks and stories of Pop and stories of his father. But I don't know. I hadn't thought about it like that, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I am wondering if it's going to continue to be a road novel in that case, because like you said,
maybe
it was 3 of the 6 chapters or whatever, because we did spend a significant time at home and getting flashbacks or whatever else. And so in that sense, it is kind of deviating a lot, because I think there was a lot of exposition at the beginning of As I Lay Dying where they were waiting for a little bit till they go, but now I wonder if there's going to be a significant amount of time back home, and how Michael kind of affects everyone's relationships now, because obviously there's strain with his side of the family, and then bringing him back in with Papa, and also their grandma is actively dying. So
that was a comparison that I made, was that Addie was the matriarch of the family, and she was the one in the title As I Lay Dying. And also Mom, I think it's just Mom, not Mama.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I think he calls them Mam and Pops.
M-A-M, yeah, M-A-M, yeah.
Yeah, Mam or Mom or whatever.
Coming up with these random... It's Papa and Mama, obviously.
Let's check the book.
We've been starting other books, and we're in a nebulous place. But yeah, I think it's definitely M-A-M.
But she's the matriarch of this family, and she is dying, and so maybe that will come up more later. We haven't heard that much from her.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting.
So I don't know if that'll be important. I do think that, Dani, your point is interesting of if we're comparing it, As I Lay Dying is a journey to bring Addie somewhere, and maybe this journey is to bring Michael somewhere. So maybe we're just starting it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, and also that's really interesting. I didn't think about it like that. I wasn't comparing Mam and Addie, comparing Leonie and Addie. And so but I think structurally, actually, comparing Addie and Mam is makes, maybe that's what the person who compared these, was going for, because they are both the matriarchs who are dying. But I was comparing Leonie as the the more present female character. I think Mam is definitely, I think Leonie, maybe, I don't know, maybe she's just front of mind for me. But I hadn't thought about that.
And if these comparisons are starting to get more in line with that, now I'm really worried for Kayla as a comparison to Cash in As I Lay Dying, because Cash was he had his broken leg, and that was the issue.
Yeah.
And now Kayla is sick, or we don't even know really what's going on, like specifically.
She's been like the baby. She's like 3, I think.
Mm-hmm.
She's been like vomiting throughout the trip,
So
which
now,
is an interesting comparison to Cash breaking his leg.
Yeah. Because that was something they were,
sick.
that's what they were dealing with the whole time was Cash on the ride, and now Kayla is also there too. So I'm wondering, is Kayla gonna have some permanent deficiency once this is all over?
Are they gonna put her in cement?
Yeah, who knows?
They probably will. I was thinking about Kayla's sickness also being like just like a very clear setup for showing like that Leonie is not like is really not a great mother, and like to be fair, she probably didn't want to be a mother, maybe, but I mean she has these like 2 kids, and she really doesn't do a great job of taking care of them. JoJo actually like arguably is Kayla's main caretaker, even more, you know, he is always the one that she is reaching for. She usually doesn't want to go to her mom to be comforted, and then even further, like there's a point on the trip where Kayla keeps vomiting and Leonie tries to just give her Powerade and she keeps throwing up. Like it's almost like excessive, like the number of times that the author like brings up how often Kayla is vomiting, and then Leonie goes and forages for some kind of medicinal plant that she says her mom has taught her about, and JoJo straight up doesn't trust her. He makes Kayla throw them up yet again after Leonie gives them to Kayla. So, you know, there's a lot of like, you know, there's no trust really. Like Kayla being so sick is, and Leonie really not having any idea what to even do about it is kind of alarming. And
also
so
she was actively on meth while he was trying to get her to throw up. It's just like,
so also Leonie doesn't know what she's doing, and she is very much on meth while she's trying to take care of her daughter, or you know, barely. So that's probably should have mentioned that first.
Yeah, it's not a great situation, and the fact that was happening, that she was still okay with like leaving her sick daughter upstairs while they made this pit stop, it's crazy to think what could still happen toward the back half of this book.
I'm concerned.
We've alluded to this a little bit, but I'd like to talk about just the characterization of our 2 main narrators, of JoJo and Leonie, because I found myself feeling very, very conflicted throughout the majority of the novel. Like, obviously, I think that JoJo is our protagonist, but I also every time that JoJo is narrating, I hate Leonie, and then once Leonie is narrating, I like really sympathize with her and for her, because she's had a really difficult life as well and dealt with a lot of things like the death of her brother and just like a lot of racism, which a lot of the characters have dealt with. But I feel like falling in love with someone and then their family actively hating you because you're black is going to be very difficult.
And her just drug addiction anyway, that like obviously it's bad for her to be taking the drugs, but also like there's instances of, you know, addiction to them that she's having to deal with in the meantime, and like that's maybe affecting the rest of her interactions with anybody else, and like that's something to sympathize with, even though it comes out in obviously shitty behavior.
Yeah, and I also feel like during her stints of narration, she feels very like self-aware of that, like she's a bad mother. It doesn't change her actions, but I do think that she recognizes it and like does feel bad in some way. So I don't know, like where are you at with that?
That's actually part of the reason why I drew the similarity like between Addie and Leonie, because like, you know, Addie goes through, whether it's when she's in the coffin or beforehand, I can't remember, but she goes through kind of like, you know, and during her life, like she goes through like an existential, like just having kids, and she doesn't even really know why. And so I feel like that was kind of also, you know, she admitted to really not even like liking some of her kids, and she didn't really like being a mother. And so part of the reason why I ended up drawing that conclusion was because drawing that line was because Leonie also, like, I don't think, do they explain like the circumstances? She just was with Michael and she got pregnant twice. Is that like kind of the story as far as we know it?
I assume. I feel like there was like an offhanded comment or something somewhere, but it hasn't gone into detail about them like trying to plan for a kid. I doubt
right.
that.
I mean, I'm sure. I was just assuming that it was probably unplanned, and also just like, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of responsible birth control going on, and also like that probably like that's not even something that is accessible or reasonable. So I was just assuming that they were both pretty much unplanned, but also that's kind of a wide, that's 10 years in between having JoJo and having Kayla. So we'll probably find out more about the circumstances, but I do absolutely sympathize with Leonie, like hearing everything from her point of view. I mean, makes you like, you're right. Like, it doesn't really change her actions, but it does like make you understand like why she is the kind of person that she is, why she's the kind of mother that she is. And she probably thought that her mom, Ma'am, would take care of her kids better than she would. And she kind of does, her parents kind of do take care of her own kids better than she does. And so, it might be just a combination of lack of interest in like being a mother. Also, I'm sure the meth doesn't help. And
interesting observation.
Also
the
cocaine
meth
and weed and a lot of other things.
Right.
So, like, I'm gonna just posit that like that kind of heavy drug use like doesn't make you a better parent. And so, I know that's kind of out there.
Dani, these takes.
Such a hot take. But I also feel that like reading from JoJo's point of view, you really, really want to be furious with Leonie, and I think I continue to kind of be upset with her, but also like it's much more understandable. And you really do sympathize and like feel bad because like she was kind of just brought. It sounds like she was just brought into the situation a little bit unwittingly, or maybe a lot unwittingly. So I don't know, Brian. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be curious to see if there is more backstory with the time period that they had Kayla, because one of the specific references that we did get was this comparison of time to Kayla being born and growing up with Michael going to jail. Like that was a major point early on that JoJo kind of had in his mind.
Yeah.
And so I think that will be something that I think we'll get a little bit more cleared up on, because it does seem like Michael and Leonie have these just wild fits of random passion in either direction, in a loving way and in a we're gonna beat each other up kind of way. So I think that will be kind of interesting. But also one of the things that caught my eye when Michael came into the car was that Michael was more concerned about Kayla than Leonie was, and this was right off the bat. And it's not like this was something that's like, oh, Michael's parental instincts may be so much better. Like, she straight up doesn't look good. She's been throwing up, can't keep anything down.
And he notices, like,
but at the very least, he did notice.
Yeah.
So it'll be kind of interesting to see how their parenting style's different as well. If maybe it helps Leonie to feel that more, because the father of her children is also out of the picture. That's got to be a big stressor as well. And so, I do definitely feel some sympathy for Leonie, but like there is still something there that like it's not totally excusable either, because she is just straight up hearing that her children, or JoJo specifically, saying that like he's hungry or thirsty or whatever, and she's just not allowing any moment for him to fulfill basic needs.
Yeah.
Well, I actually think that like I agree with that. I think that she actually, like, this might be just like a testament to her like immaturity as like a person and as a mother, but like she like, it sounds like sometimes when she doesn't feed JoJo or she doesn't offer him things, she sounds jealous and resentful of him because Kayla
I agree.
wants to, like, that we even hear. There are times, like, when she's narrating that she, like, is mad that Kayla wants to, you know, she reaches to JoJo for, like, comfort. This, like, 3-year-old who is her daughter, she doesn't reach for her mom. And so I think she feels rejected by Kayla. I think she feels rejected by JoJo. And she feels resentful of her 13-year-old son, who, like, seems to have kind of, like, more of a parental instinct kick in, you know, more than, like, she does. And then also just, like, an interesting, I don't know, I mean, you wouldn't know this unless you, like, saw it spelled out. JoJo specifically calls Kayla, Kayla, but she's named after her dad. Her name is spelled Michaela, like Michael. And so, like, I mean, that was another, like, interesting layer of just kind of like it had a little bit of meaning, you know, once you first learn that. And then once you see the way that Michael is with his daughter, you know, like, we don't know that relationship yet. We don't know.
Yeah,
or,
very,
you know,
very preliminary so far.
Right.
Or
but
even, we don't
he
really
seems,
know how long Michael has been in jail. Like, does he know Michaela?
It
that
sounds
much?
like
Well, it didn't sound like it, yeah.
majority of her life.
Yeah.
Her 3 years, yeah.
It's about 3 years. But I mean, yeah, I was also actually interested in, like, the way that Leone, like, just contrasting their interactions with their kids. Like, Michael actually seemed a little bit deferential and, like, respectful almost, you know, like, Kayla didn't really want to go to him, and he was just kind of like, that's all right, she doesn't know me yet, you know. And it was, like, immediately, like, he was concerned about Kayla, and, like, I don't want to shit on Leone any more than we already have, but, like, but, you know, like, seeing that immediate difference of, you know, he comes out to the car, and I'm sure he was, like, missing his children, but, like, also had this connection with Kayla, or wanted to have a connection with Kayla, and was very, didn't force anything, was very, like, respectful to his, like, 3-year-old child. So I don't know.
After making out with Leone first, though, just to make that clear.
To make that very passionate. That is not the first thing that he does.
But yeah, it does. It definitely is, like, an interesting point for that. And the only thing I'm worried about now is that, you know, Michael obviously has had problems with drugs as well, because it's related to his or the reason he's in jail anyway. And now he's going to be out, and it's not like drugs are that out of the way. You know, we've already had significant scenes of Leone getting high on hard drugs.
Yeah.
And now he's going to be back in that environment.
Mostly through her friend Misty, who is also on this trip. Like, is
in
the car
we barely
actively.
talk about Misty, but yeah. Misty also has a significant other that's in the same jail that Michael is in. So, but
buddies, twinsies.
Yeah, right. But for the last thing, just as a very brief thing on Leone, I will say, like, just these visions with Given, you'd have to assume she has a conscience. And, like, you know, we've already alluded to that a bit, but, like, the fact that he only appears whenever she gets high specifically, like, that there's going to be a play there that, you know, she's not just, like, totally oblivious to her actions. It just may be hard in the circumstances that she's in to turn it around. But I do get worried about Michael coming back into the fold, especially when, you know, he may be acting nice now, having been away from the drug scene. But now that he's back, that seems to be a recipe for trouble. But who knows? He could be a catalyst for good in the back half, hopefully. But, you know, it's hard to tell.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to talk about, because I kept doing this throughout reading, and I don't know if this is me, I don't know, being ignorant, or just it's a different setting than I'm used to. But, like, the narration, the story that we've heard so far spans, like, almost 100 years, like a long time. A lot of Pop talking about, like, his childhood and his time in the penitentiary, and then also JoJo's narration is current day, like, basically current day. I've been reading it as, like, 2016 or so. because there are modern references to like Powerade and whatever, but also the like race relations in Mississippi as they are describing them don't feel like they've changed that much. Like Leonie makes a point to talk about like it's weird that she's friends with Misty because Misty is white and why would she be friends with me? And obviously we see like Michael's family being very, very bigoted towards Leonie's family.
And even Leonie in the present day with her trying to deliver the letter that Michael's going to be released, and her and Michael's dad.
And Michael's dad
gets a gun on his lawnmower. Just races to the front.
I don't know. Is that a commentary specifically on Mississippi, on this community? Is that me being ignorant, living mostly in big cities? Is this like a smaller town where racism is
so blatant?
Yeah, more actively apparent in the day-to-day? Because I feel like every time I hear Leonie talk about race, my mind goes back like to the 1950s. Like that feels like how it is being told. I don't know. Did you feel that same way?
Yeah, I actually, for like a while, realized that I was reading the book, even though I knew there were, current references and I knew it was present day. Like, I was reading it like it was all, like Pop's story was part of this timeline, or this timeline was part of Pop's story. Like, I had to check myself and remember that this was not the 50s, like that this was not. And I think partially that's like me, like, as a white person reading this and truly not like, even I've never been to Mississippi. I have never been where they are. Like I can't like, even, I don't really think start to imagine like how to identify or understand. So I was kind of, though, after I realized that, I was like starting to take Leonie's kind of like word for it, basically just being like, this is, like, this is batshit, but like, I think that's the point. I think that's the commentary that Jesmyn Ward is making, that like, it's almost time, like racism is time agnostic. Like, like, I mean, it's like I think that it comes out in like very different ways. But even like her father-in-law or whatever, Michael's dad, like coming at her with a shotgun on a tractor, like that is 2016, that is 1950, like that is, I don't know, it feels very like that's the point, it's not supposed to, we're not being told necessarily what year it is in any of the cases. I think because she's trying to make the point that things are still, that is Leonie's like reality. That's kind of how I was reading it.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know if it's like a commentary on Mississippi broadly, and like I don't know Mississippi that well either. I've been in like similar parts, I suppose, but I think that like it is just like an important telling that while it may not be like an indictment on broader Mississippi, just that pockets in communities all over still have some fostering of racist ill will toward others. I do think something that was particularly interesting, though, is that, I think that this pocket is obviously very severe. Again, I don't know if it's, trying to say that every single person in Mississippi is racist, because I don't believe that.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's not what I was saying.
Sure, but on this broad scale, like, you can see that there were already tensions anyway from the previous instance of, like, Michael's cousin shooting. Yeah. And so there's already tension there anyway that's even carrying through the story as a whole. And even just some of, like, these particular pockets with the jail, for instance, that just like some old habits die hard with, how they organize the labor in that prison and the deferential treatment of certain people over others, like with the dogs, for instance. Like, they would only have white people be in charge of the dogs, except for the brief moment where Pop had did it or had done it. But I think it is just like trying to highlight that in certain instances the recipe still is right, even in the modern day. That like this perfect storm can come up, even if it was like tensions rose off of a drunken incident. Like that can carry waves past that, because now you're talking about Leone coming up and Michael's dad reacting the way he did. A lot of that I would assume is partially from that previous history anyway.
Yeah.
So like that's an interesting dichotomy to it too. But just seeing that any of those smaller things can just like flare things up in such an out of control way in a time where we think that a lot of those attitudes are of the past. But there's a lot of instances where somewhat accidentally, I'd say somewhat, because there's still some definite motive in that particular scene that it can flare things up pretty easily.
I think also another reason that I pointed specifically to Mississippi is there's a note in the back of our copy of the book for book clubs in particular. But it talks about Mississippi State Penitentiary, also known as Parchman Farm, is still in use today and is the only maximum security prison for men in the state of Mississippi. And I feel like every time they talk about Parchman Farm, it's so reminiscent of slavery, which like prisons are a lot. But like working out in the field and picking things and doing that kind of hard labor. I don't know. I feel like it's just it is a modern day telling of racism that I haven't seen as much recently, which is interesting. And it's like definitely part of the point of this novel. Like we're looking at JoJo, our main character, a mixed race kid living in this bigotry, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the past and present aspect of it allows that comparison to be more prevalent, rather than just telling it from this standpoint only here in the present, because especially in the penitentiary, that was something that even of its time when Pop was there was still seemingly carrying these overtones, as you were mentioning, of slavery in the fields, of these are prison inmates having to work the fields in the 20th century.
Yeah.
Which even that in and of itself was kind of a bizarre scene to take in for that time period. So I think that it is purposeful to do that, but just alone that we have JoJo as a mixed race child, and is still able with his grandparents to have some normality in their family life of calling them essentially like mom and dad. It shows the progress as well, but definitely seeing the comparison from past to present highlights the things that still need to work, which I think it's done with a light touch in this case, because a lot of the focus still is on like the familial relations, while you're getting this backstory into the other aspects that carry these racial themes. It is still focused on like a family story on the road. So I think that that's impressive that she's able to strike the balance of those tones in this story for sure.
Yeah. And my last big thing, I don't know how much time has passed.
We could probably do final thoughts.
Oh, you want to do final thoughts?
Yeah, we're about there.
Okay. Also, as you're doing final thoughts, if you want to touch base on like the magical realism element, which we've talked about a little bit, but like the ghosts, we haven't even mentioned Richie that much, who was the last chapter, and it was short, and we haven't learned that much about him. But we've read like quite a few magical realistic novels, for the pod. Lincoln in the Bardo, 100 Years of Solitude, which I love. But I know that really turns some people off. I saw reviews on Goodreads where people were like, I was really into this book until she mentioned Ghost. And so...
Oh, what? The main part of the story?
Yeah.
That sounds like a very narrow way to read this book.
But it is an interesting element, and I think it's really well done. But while you're doing your final thoughts, if you want to talk about that, feel free. I don't care who starts.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt somebody earlier, but we were talking about Leonie actually, like, she sees visions of her brother given when she gets high, and I actually started to think, like, her mom, told her when she was 13 or 14, like, she explained to her that some, like, women in their family tend to have kind of, like, magical, telepathic kind of, like, visions and abilities. And it actually seems to me that it skipped Leonie, and it actually goes straight to Jojo. Jojo is the one who seems to be the one who, he sees Richie, right? Richie's a ghost,
end,
right?
yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah, Richie's a ghost, for sure.
I thought so. I started to second guess myself. He sees Richie, and actually, like, he kind of alludes to being able to talk to animals, and he has, like, a very interesting, like, relationship with, like, nature and animals, and even he seems to have a sixth sense, like, that involves Kayla. Like, she's a child who can't explain why she's feeling bad, and he's the only one who can make her feel better. He almost, like, instinctively knows what she wants. So I actually, like, took Leonie's if we're trying to get really, like, deep into it, Leonie's abilities don't really seem like abilities to me. They seem more like she's really having to, like, force, she only sees given when she gets high. She, like, has to do, like, hard drugs to, like, see these visions, and they, like, come very, like, naturally to Jojo. So I don't know, I was thinking a lot about that, like, just, like, yet another way that, like, Leonie might feel inadequate compared to Jojo, or inadequate compared to her mom. I don't know if they speak about this kind of thing, but even with, like, gathering, like, the plants and the roots, like, she said her mom taught her all of these things, but also, like, she doesn't remember any of them, and she doesn't actually seem to care that much. And or like, she didn't have the space in her mind to care about that kind of thing. But it just seems like it actually maybe, like, she's forcing this ability that she maybe doesn't even have, and instead, like, Jojo is the one who has it. And I mean, to that end also, like, I really enjoy, like, this kind of thing where it's almost, like, a little bit ambiguous. Like, it reminds me of 100 Years of Solitude, because, it's, like, a very normal sounding story, but then there's just, like, one tiny, like, element of, like, mysticism thrown in, and I really, really enjoy that. It makes it feel very real to me. And I also found myself thinking even about the Underground Railroad, which we read last season, and that was, like, it's not really mystical, but there is still, everything is, like, very much real and the same and historically accurate, except for the one element of the actual Underground Railroad. It made me think of that too. Mm-hmm. That's like, one of the things I was thinking about. So I really enjoy it. I hope that the back half of the book, like, explores the mysticism even further.
Yeah, I definitely think with that magical realism part of the story, just as I had mentioned with the previous question, that, it's such a light touch on the elements of racism. There's also a light touch with these elements of magical realism as well, that it's just helping to color in the overall story, which again is still centered, the way that I've felt it so far, on this overall journey, where it's not just focusing on, like, people having visions of ghosts. It's just kind of like, that's a side thing that's happening, or here's these backstories to inform why everyone's reacting to each other the way they are in this present moment on the road. A lot of it is all just to inform and give more complexity to something that could be a pretty boring tale of just, again, this A to B journey, or A to B to A in this case, potentially, that it does help color it in, and it's just done so lightly that I don't know how people could, on Goodreads, it is, I mean, everybody has their own opinions on things, but it's not even that
You talked about a ghost once.
It's just like, it's not that, well, yeah, it's not that overwhelming so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very subtle.
Yeah, and so I like that all of those elements are important to inform the story, but that it does still keep it within this main idea. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting on the back half, because really with what we just got to, it's almost like we added two completely new characters, because Michael was only alluded to in these flashbacks, but now he's there. And then our last chapter, Richie as a ghost is coming to JoJo. And so, like, those are going to be huge factors that'll change a lot of what's going on in the back half. And so I'm curious to see how they affect the story, especially now that JoJo has something that's so real that, like, even though we've talked about the fact that these ghostly additions in the story were subtle, at the same time, they did have references where Leonie's at the table with her friends and is high and is still looking at this empty chair. So it's still affecting her in the real world. What's that going to do to JoJo in this case? And how is that going to play in now that he has more kind of scrutiny with both of his parents there now? Like, what will that be for them to see him react to something that's not there?
Yeah.
And especially with Michael, who still doesn't have, we were talking about he's not there for most of Kayla's life. Like, JoJo's not that old either. He hasn't been there for a lot of JoJo's life.
And JoJo actively distrusts him.
Yeah,
like, we know that.
So now that JoJo all of a sudden has his dad back and is seeing visions, that's going to be a huge thing for him. That's going to change a lot of how he experiences the back half of the trip. So I think that'll be pretty interesting and exciting to see where that goes.
Yeah. I mimic a lot of what you guys said. I agree with you, Dani. I think that her visions of Given feel kind of forced, and also feel like maybe they're just built out of some kind of guilt.
Yeah.
Like, Leonie doesn't have any, so far that we know, I don't think, doesn't have any reason to feel guilty for Given's death. Like, she wasn't there. But every time he pops up, that's what I think of, is that she feels guilty about something. And maybe he's just, like, her conscience saying, like, you're doing bad things. But I'm super interested to see how that'll play out, because I liked Given every time we saw him, even though he didn't do that much. Like, he talked a little bit and mostly just sort of gestured. And Richie, I feel the same way. I think that'll be really interesting. I love magical realism, and I love ghosts and everything to do with it, so I'm very excited.
love me a ghostly edition.
I love a ghostly edition. So I'm super excited to see how that'll play out. Yeah, I don't know. I mimic your thoughts.
Nice.
Good stuff, guys.
Good stuff.
This is good. Good pick, James.
Talk about
Thanks.
ghostly edition. Just Dani not being in this room right now.
I am the ghostly edition of this podcast.
Oh man, it's been definitely weird not having you in the room, but for all the
I hate it.
for all the listeners at home, we put the computer with Dani FaceTiming in the same chair she normally sits in.
I
So
have the exact same view. It's great. I'm feeling as close to you guys as is allowed by the CDC.
Yeah, so definitely, if anybody joined us during this time of quarantine, we hope.
Oh yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about,
Yeah.
read the news.
Yeah, unless they're listening to this way later, but we're hoping if you listen to this during this time of self-isolation and quarantine that we brought a little distraction to your day, and it's looking like we'll be repeating this same setup for next episode too.
Yeah, unclear.
Which,
Yeah.
it might be in like 2 days because I'm going to finish this very quickly.
Just rip through.
I have nothing to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not. I mean, we have so much time on our hands, even with work.
Yeah. So we'll probably be back in this setup. It's going to be another quarantine with books. But yeah, we're glad this worked out. Hopefully we'll be ending this in just a second and check and make sure this episode recorded. But yeah, we will catch you next time. Anybody want to scat us out?
I think it's your turn, Brian.
Is it me?
Brian, it's your turn to scat, for sure. Wow.
Dani loved that.
Whoa, dude, nice.
That was so funky.
We will catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.